this idea of saving lives, this concept of saving lives, and just this idea that you can't actually save a life, right? We're mortal, so death, being mortal, would be inevitable, and so you can't save a life. You can only prolong it. And one of the things I've long felt about a chronic illness, for example, is even if you can prolong the inevitable, if you want to call it that, the years you have, anyone who has ever loved anyone with chronic illness knows that the illness takes life out of the years you have, even if it doesn't take years off your actual life. And by the way, it does, right? And you die from lots of things, including, in the case of COVID-19, certainly the most vulnerable people, they're at risk for dying of all kinds of things. Still, to me, it's separate, though, from the question of how we want to live our lives. And certainly also always coming back to this idea of just having rather than just a horizontal across the board, what we do for the elderly in nursing homes, we should do the exact same thing for kids. I joke about chicken pox parties of the 80s where my mom purposely gave me a bath with my sister in hopes that I would get chicken pox, and I'd get a mild case so I wouldn't get it later, stuff like that. I think sleepover camp would have been awesome. But certainly that's a personal opinion that separate from the idea that each individual should have a freedom of choice. So certainly, why for me, I might have a teenager who's at risk of suicide, and being in the band was the thing that sort of kept them balanced, or how do we put a value on games of tag, or just for little kids that are developing, versus this idea, oh my gosh, I can't touch any of my friends could kill my grandmother. Maybe don't see your grandmother then if your grandmother's at risk. I mean, you can do a health assessment to understand, but I use this only as an example of this concept of the idea of saving lives, and the most important thing is to live for the longest. And Charles Eisenstein, I come back to, he often talks about this idea that what kind of world would you want to live in? So even if you could, let's say, kill off the Amazon and the Congo, and we don't need them as the lungs of the planet, or keep spraying chemicals all over the earth, and imagine that if we poison where we grow our food, that it's not somehow going to feed back into our bodies and all that stuff. But even if we could, and even if we don't think about the microbiome and gut flora and all that stuff, and just that we need a certain diversity of microbes, if we don't have that, actually, like autoimmunity, so there's so many things that are circular. Even this idea that there are, people I've never been accused of being a right-wing conspiracy theorist before. Never! I've been radical left, crazy in all the ways, but not that. This is so exciting and new for me. And the fact that people think I'm pretty much the same as Donald Trump, who are my friends who've said this to me, blows my mind that philosophically we're the same. I can't even imagine what they think my views are on, say, women, or I just can't even imagine. But ask me. I'm curious. I'm happy to tell you my views on women, and lots of things. Maybe a little too happy and a little bit too embracing of this philosophy of living by truth. So where was I going with COVID? So just to come back to, I was going to live in a city. I was going to live in Halifax, and I was so excited because I had such a great time in Halifax last time I was there, and so happy that some of the used bookstores that I used to enjoy meandering through and browsing through, so happy to see they're in business, and so many businesses I would have loved to support. But this idea that I have to mask myself to go in, and yet they're not crucial and essential, right? So if there is a pandemic where I don't need to go in those stores, and certainly the bars I love that a couple of them are still open, and yet if there's a pandemic, why are the bars open, right? So I ask these kinds of questions, and yet my son couldn't go to camp, right? And that we're choosing to homeschool because it's so intolerable to me, and actually akin to child abuse, to mask our children, right? And I just think about, even, we talk about service with a smile, but now everything's touchless service. We're getting used to being served by robots, and people who used to be human are just being forced to follow these crazy rules and mask themselves like muzzles. It's so crazy to me. I know so many people who have left jobs because they can't breathe, because they have serious health problems that they have never even disclosed to their employers. But I know the vibe of all these chumps I want to support, even though I know what they think about the mask rule in some cases, and I keep advising them, like I advise everyone, if you want to give people freedom of choice, just put a sign that says, I'm assuming that if the law is to wear masks and you're not wearing one, you have a medical exemption. And I won't give you a hard time about that. You're welcome to shop here. Please come in. All are welcome. All are welcome. There's so many things. And, we're missing, I go to these freedom rallies, and one of the things that keeps coming up is that we're missing unified messages. And one of the things around contact tracing and collection of personal information, all in the name of this thing. So as a right-wing conspirator, and even that, right, that usually the left has been associated with conspiracy theories and questioning the man. And so now that it's the right, even the what do they call that? Performative, what did I say? Performative politics? That was performative politics. I think it's just such theater now. Left and right just becomes meaningless when you have a global technocracy, and artificial intelligence. And what I keep coming back to is, I don't think it's a good versus evil. I don't think it's, I think, like Charles Eisenstein keeps articulating so beautifully, it is a separation story. Separation from self and from nature, that somehow we're not a part of nature, we don't need these microbes, that we don't, viruses are crucial, and the microbes we need to train our immune system, introduce it, bubbling kids and babies, we know this, sterile environments right? So there's all this stuff around anyone who's ever experienced their body, right? And then they breathe in a mask and they get rashes and stuff. Just notice that maybe for you, different choices might make sense, and it's okay to ask questions, very reasonable questions about how long we were going to quarantine, and that was just going to be shelter in place to postpone. Again, just really understanding. I posted a video on Facebook, 3 minutes, so articulate, not complaining, certainly feeling privileged, and yet the withering of a teenager. And you see all this stuff. You see all this stuff, how people, beg for play dates, and I can feel it in myself, wanting to just meet people and hang out, and I know they're scared to come within 6 feet. It's so sad for me, and I'm sure that I had COVID right at the beginning, but I guess if I could technically be a carrier for any number of things, including crazy ideas. So, Team Human, this is my crazy idea. One of the things I've concluded, freedom rallies, all of those things, Shoshana Zuboff, oh my gosh, read, listen, surveillance capitalism, just start understanding AI, that maybe it's not bad guys, maybe it's an inhuman force, and that inhuman force is the algorithm that wants to turn the planet into money. We all know, we're taught, we all do this, we're complicit. Most of us work in some way where we're changing resources, right, whether they're natural or human, okay, into profit, money, an abstract symbol. So when we understand and we're killing the substrate on which we depend, and we all do this when we make a living this way. So for me, my new activism is I want to make a living, right? I totally so much support the spirit of gift, of course, but also just really helping each other. I farmers, carpenters, I'm recruiting for Team Human, all the trades, because just learning and changing an old-fashioned, like, volunteering help in exchange for knowledge and lessons and understanding. Those are all the things I see, both for my son as we try to figure out homeschooling that works, hiring private teachers, whether they're artists, part just Team Human. If you're looking for work, you're looking to do an exchange, there's so many things that are so interesting, and I'm just so desperate to get people out to beautiful parts of rural Nova Scotia this fall. Stay for 2 weeks. I've got the perfect place to quarantine. Seriously, have lots of ideas. Recruiting for Team Human. Thank you. Apply within.